I want to introduce Nevada State Controller Ron Knecht as our next speaker. He was, wait, you haven't heard him speak yet. He might be terrible. I mean, Ron will be receiving our Taxpayer Hero Award tonight, if you hadn't seen that. He was one of the Lean 15 in 2003 when the Assembly tried to stop, at the time, the largest tax increase in history, and now as controller is leading the effort to repeal the commerce tax, which never should have passed in the first place. So, Ron, come on up.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, Chuck, thank you for organizing this. You're doing a great job, and you will do another.
Only if there's a lot of alcohol involved.
We can provide that. And thank you all for being here and for what you do every day. The real reason Chuck asked me to speak is he needed a bridge between John Sarpalis and Brent Jones, and I seemed like a likely character. My fellow deplorables, I hope there are no snowflakes in this crowd because I'm not going to give any trigger warnings, there won't be any safe spaces, and there won't be any participation trophies, okay? There will be microaggressions, there may even be some macroaggressions, and well, we'll find out whether there's going to be any intellectual or philosophical nudity. Why did I run for controller and what have I done? I'm going to tell you three things. First, I wanted to promote transparency, accountability, and I wanted to do a little bit of debunking. Why do we need any debunking? Let me tell you a couple things. Have you heard that Nevada has a revenue problem? Maybe somebody ought to debunk that. We had one legislator who said that in his time in the legislature, he said this a few years ago, that he had witnessed the systematic destruction of K-12 education. Well, that may be true because they're not doing well, but it's not for underfunding, okay? Let me tell you the facts about it that debunk those claims. First is that on a per-person basis, adjusted for inflation, that's per person real terms, spending on K-12 education by the state of Nevada over the last dozen years has gone up 11%. That's in real per-person terms. Because that and health and social services spending has gone up even more, and all of that together is 82% of the state budget, guess what? State spending, did I say 11%? It's gone up 18%. I sometimes get confused by numbers, like you all do, okay? 18% for education. Because of health and social services spending going up even more, because of K-12 and higher ed spending going up the way it has, especially K-12, state spending has gone up 11%. Everything else in the state budget has gone down in real per person terms. But here's the important thing that you never hear. In that same 12-year period, the incomes of Nevada families and businesses went down on the same basis, on the same real per person basis, by 9%. There's over a 20% differential between what the people who are paying the bills have experienced and what the state has experienced, and what the K-12 system has experienced is even more. You'll never read that in the Nevada papers, in the lamestream media. Here's something else they won't tell you. In the same time, we've had a lot of spending go up that's funded by federal grants. And especially Medicaid under the Obamacare Act. By the way, what we're doing there is subsidizing people with middle incomes who are single, able-bodied with no dependents and can work. We're going to subsidize their health care. If you're going to subsidize some health care for somebody, why don't you do it for the deserving poor? So, legal too. The bill is coming due. The burden will be shifted from the federal government to you all, okay? You haven't read that in the papers. Now I get to bring out my inner nerd and tell you something else. Second reason I ran was to take care of the nuts and bolts, the daily ministerial work. And so one of the things I promised to do was replace the 20-year-old antiquated, dysfunctional accounting, finance, and IT system that connects all the state agencies. We are working diligently with that with everybody. I said we'd improve debt collection. We inherited a really problematic contract from my predecessor. We worked hard with a lot of people. We've got that under control. We're improving debt collection. I said above all, we'd put the state checkbook up online. We're working on that, and we found that there are a lot of problems with the way the agencies use the accounting system that may violate the law, and we're correcting that. And before the election, we're going to have the state checkbook up online so you can go check out things yourself. Oh, yeah. I mentioned that we might be able to save a little money. You know, it's one thing to say we got to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse, and I agree, but the day-to-day management's an even tougher thing. So I inherited a budget from my predecessor, which was approved by the legislature and the governor, and in the first year, in the first full fiscal year, we cut spending by 13% from that budget. And in the first 2 years, we turned back $2 million on a roughly $5 million per year budget, okay? It can be done. It can be done, and the proof is in the fact that we've done it. I also said we would do some publishing. We'd get you some information. And if you haven't got this PAFR, raise your hand, and Bill Steeren and company will get you one. You really need to get this and to read it. Why? Some of you know. Everything in here is going to be on the final exam, okay? Some people haven't been very happy that we put all that information out. Finally, coming up soon, we're going to be trying to help the state pension system for public employees, the PERS system, get real about what kind of returns they can expect. This is the nuts and bolts stuff that a nerd like me really enjoys, okay? By the way, if they don't get real, we're going to sink into the same swamp that Illinois and Kentucky and New Jersey are already in. They need to do that. Most of all, the third thing is I said I would provide a leadership of thought, ideas, and thought and ideas are great, but they don't matter unless you've got action to go with it. So one thing we did when the governor proposed and the legislature was entertaining, and thank you, Don Gustafson and Jim Marchant for opposing this. Yeah. The legislature was entertaining the biggest tax increase in our state's history, spending increases all over the place. We actually brought forth an alternate budget. Myself, Jeff Lawrence, some legislators, some professionals, and some citizens. We brought forth an alternate budget that what? This is the standard that Grover spoke yesterday, and it's what I agree, would actually grow state spending slower than Nevada's economy. The reason we're in the mess we're in is for over 60, 65 years, we've been growing state, federal, local spending faster than the economy. We need to spend the next 65 years growing it slower. So we brought forth this budget, and by the way, it didn't even need a tax increase, none. Well, you can imagine that the legislature was thrilled, right? Of course they weren't. They had a spending increase and a tax bill to pass, and they said, put that stuff in the closet. We weren't able to lay a glove on it in committee. It looks like it's beautiful. We don't want to hear about it anymore. Put that in the closet, everybody ignore it, and let's go pass the spending and tax increases. And they did. So what did we do? Well, being nerds, we did the obvious thing. We got that coalition of a few legislators, of some professionals and citizens, and we went out and found some really great lawyers, and we filed a measure to put on the ballot a referendum on that commerce tax. In the end, after they strung it out for a long time, 6 politicians on the Supreme Court said, well, you didn't tell people in your description of effect that if they cut this commerce tax, the state might have a little bit less to spend going forward. Now, I'm sure y'all didn't know that. So this time, we went out earlier. We changed everything to pacify the court. And this last Monday was the last day for the bad guys to file a challenge in court. And what do you think they did? They didn't answer the bell. We are now free to go get signatures over the next 8 months with no threat, no possibility of a legal challenge. All we have to do, working with people like NPRI, working with Americans for Prosperity, and working with the Real Chamber of Commerce and others, all we have to do is get a bunch of signatures. We're doing that. We're doing the funding and the operations planning right now, and you will soon be getting petitions, and we will soon have people in the field, and we're going to get this done so that the people of Nevada, you all, have the last word, and we finally drive a stake through the heart of the gross receipts taxes. Let me give you a bonus here that's right in the heart of the spirit of this conference. This will be the way that we drain the swamp in Nevada going forward for the next 10 to 20 years, and I'll explain why. In the past, when they brought the first gross receipts tax that Don and I and other people like Bob Beers stopped, when they brought that, they brought the full wish list. It was huge. It was unbelievable. This time, they were really, really diabolically clever. This commerce tax is the camel's nose under the tent with 2 massive humps to follow and probably a lot more. They started with low rates. They started with high thresholds. But most of all, they said, we're going to create the greatest swamp in state government history. They said, instead of a single rate that applies to everybody that will unify all the people who are paying this tax, we're going to create 26, 27 different rates, one for each business or industry, not very well defined. You keep it loose because that way the swamp works better. How does it work? If you got 26 rates, you say to the truckers, well, if you come to the table, y'all know what come to the table means? Put your money on the table. If you come to the table, we won't raise your rate this session of the legislature. You say to the car dealers, if you come to the table, we won't raise your rate. If you don't come to the table, well, you might just be out of luck. In short, what this is for the next 10 to 20 years, it's the bonanza for the political class, for the lobbyists, for the influence peddlers, for the politicians, to milk all of Nevada industry and business and you all forever to fund the swamp. This is how the swamp works. This is what it's about. So our opportunity is to drain the swamp, to keep it from ever filling up by repealing the commerce tax. And that's what we're going to do. Brent Jones is going to talk to you in a minute about some really good things. I've been really impressed by the speakers here, and I'm going to stop right there and take any questions that you've got, but thank you for the opportunity to talk. Thank you for all the help you've given and you're going to give, and this time we're going to win.